Hello everyone, thanks for checking out my video. It's Goose coming at you with a little guide on how you can install FLUX Node on the Seeed Studio Odyssey. Stay tuned. Okay, welcome back. Now, this device, this Odyssey that's made by Seeed Studio, is a great device just for like everyday computing. You could install Windows 11 on this. You could surf the web, watch videos, check your email, do all the normal compute tasks. You might even be able to get away with a little light emulation gaming on this device. But you can also run a FLUX node, and for this particular device we would be looking at a Cumulus tier node on the FLUX network. So what I'd like to do in this video is show you how you can install the Ubuntu Server operating system on this device and then install the FLUX OS. From there, you'll be running a Cumulus level node. Now, if this is new to you, I'm going to try and make this as quick and easy as possible. We're very fortunate to have a lot of really helpful guides, as well as some great scripts to make installation a breeze. So let's get started. Before we can install the operating system on this, I just want to talk about a couple of things about the internals. You're going to need to make sure that you populate one of these M.2 slots with a proper SSD. Now I'm saying proper because this device will accommodate an M key SSD as well as a B key SSD. And so make sure that you know which one you're purchasing and for which reason. Now in our case, I'm using a B key SSD. This one here is made by Team Group. It's a 256 gigabyte SSD and it's plenty fast enough to run a Cumulus node. So we won't have to worry about failing benchmarks on this, okay? But you will need to get this particular SSD, and if you're running Cumulus, which we are, at least get a 256 gigabyte drive. Next, we're going to need to hook up all of our peripherals, and that's going to include a keyboard. So I have a wireless Logitech keyboard here. Just got to put my little dongle there, and this is my Ethernet cable. I would highly recommend using Ethernet with this because that way you'll have guaranteed internet speeds. And of course, plug in our power and then also connect a monitor. For this, I have a full-size HDMI slot, so it's really easy to work with any monitor that I'm using. For the steps in this video, I'm going to be following the standard FLUX node installation guide, which can be found on our website. So just go on over to runonflux.io, click Launch Node, click on FLUX Node Setup, and then scroll down to where we have our official FLUX Node Medium guides, and click on FLUX Node Setup Guide. This has all of the steps that you need to get up and running on the Odyssey. And of course, we're going to want to make sure that we have enough Flux in our Flux wallet in Zelcore for a Cumulus node. In our case, that is 1,000 Flux, and you can pick that up at several different exchanges, as well as mining for it or even trading for it using some of the DeFi features in Zelcore. Now we're ready to move on to the installation media. And to get a copy of Ubuntu Server, you'll need to go to the Ubuntu website, click on Download, and then click on Get Ubuntu Server. From here, we're going to go to Option 2, Manual Server Installation, and scroll down to Alternative Downloads, and get Ubuntu Server 20.04 LTS. Next, we're going to need a USB flash drive like this one here. It's just a SanDisk 16 gigabyte, and you can get those pretty much anywhere. And you're also going to need a program to flash the image on the flash drive. And for Windows users, I recommend Rufus, which is great. You can get a portable version of it. I'll leave a link down in the description. I like using the portable version of Rufus, so you can download that and basically put it on a flash drive and run it on any device without having to install anything. That's a really nice option. So what you'll want to do is put your flash drive in and then hit the select button. I have mine set to Ubuntu 20.04. You can leave all of these other options at the default. Just click on Start. It's going to say we're going to use hybrid mode. Make sure you're writing in ISO image mode. Click on OK. And that's OK if it uses syslinux. And now it's saying that all the data on the drive will be destroyed. That's OK. Next, we're going to plug our flash drive into the USB port on our Odyssey and power it on. As soon as we see the Odyssey logo, we're going to start smashing the delete key on the keyboard. That will open up the BIOS. And in here, we're going to change a few things. First of all, we're going to go to Advanced and then down to ACPI Settings. And make sure that the ACPI sleep state is suspend disabled. We want to disable all of this actually because we don't want the device to go into suspend mode at all. All right. Exit out of that. Go over to chipset and right here where it says restore on AC power loss, make sure that that is on power on. That's in case there's a power outage while you're not home or whatever. And when the power comes back, the device will power itself back on. And if you're within the time threshold allowed for downtime, it will still come back to an enabled status as far as the FLUX node is concerned. If it's out for too long, then it'll get kicked off the list and go into basically unconfirmed status. And you'll have to restart it yourself and all that. So this kind of helps to just make sure that you don't lose your place in line as far as your node payouts go. Lastly, we're going to want to make sure that this boots off of our internal SSD. So in our case, option 1, we want to make sure that this is set to our team group SSD, which it is. So after that, then I'm going to go over here to Save and Exit, click on Save Changes and Reset, and yes. And then, in order to make sure that I boot off of the flash drive, as soon as I see the Seed logo, I'm going to once again start smashing the delete key, and that'll take me back into the BIOS, and I'm going to go over here to Save and Exit, and then I want to do Boot Override UEFI SanDisk Partition 1. Click on Enter there. Okay, and now we're on the flash drive, and I have the option here to install Ubuntu Server. Okay, now we're in the installer. I apologize for the image here. It's a little bit grainy. I'm just using a USB capture device directly from the HDMI output here, but it should be good enough for us to kind of get the job done here. So the first thing here is asking what language I want to use, and English is good for me. Next, it's asking if I want to update the installer, and I don't know. I found this to be a little bit buggy in the past, so I'm just going to stick with the current installer and not update it. So we'll verify that English is good. Our keyboard layout is English. Right now it is grabbing an IP address for me. You want to remember this IP address, 192.168.10.124. All right, that's on my network right now, and that's what I'll be using to log in via SSH. So we'll go with that. Done. We don't have a proxy address. The mirror address is fine at us.archive.ubuntu.com, but that will change depending on where you're located. Now, as far as what we're going to do with this, it says where you want to install it, right? So it's automatically detected our team group SSD, and so I have the option here to use the entire disk. That's good. Sometimes the option here for set up this disk as an LVM group is also checked. You want to uncheck that option and then go to Done. And then it just verifies here that we're going to be wiping out this entire SSD and installing Ubuntu fresh. And that's good. Click Done. And it says, are you sure you want to continue? Because we're going to be erasing everything. And yes. All right, next. My name. This is Odyssey. My server's name is Cumulus. Pick a username, Cumulus. Pick a password, Cumulus. This is a Cumulus Node, guys. Of course, choose a strong, secure password, but for all intents and purposes, that's good for now. Last option, SSH. Yes, I want to make sure I install OpenSSH, so just hit the spacebar to put an X there and click on Done. As for these additional packages, you do have the option of installing Docker here, but I have found that that's not, it doesn't seem to install all the components that are needed for the FLUX node, so I'm just going to skip that and go straight to Done, and we will install it manually later on. After a few minutes, the installation will be complete, but then it automatically starts downloading security updates. So this could take a few more minutes or longer. So it depends on your internet speed. Just wait this out. It's one of the better ways to get everything installed and updated to the latest versions. And after a very long time, the updates are finally installed. Now we can click Enter to reboot. It's asking us to pull out the installation medium, so I will take my flash drive out of there and then hit Enter. All right, and because we set the BIOS to start automatically from our SSD, this should boot directly into the newly installed Ubuntu Server. There you go. And it's really flying by. Just goes to show how much faster things run on an SSD versus the USB. Okay, and that's it. It's still mounting a few things here, so this is typical. But our login is actually there. It's just a bunch of stuff on the screen. Now that it's asking us for a login, like if I hit Enter again, it says Cumulus login, it's there. I'm going to switch this over to PuTTY now, so it'll look a lot better on your end. Okay, I'm using a copy of PuTTY here, which is the SSH terminal. There are other SSH terminal emulators out there, but this one works just fine. And what we're going to put in for the IP address here is the IP that we saw during the installation process for our Ubuntu server, which was 192.168.10.124. And click on Open. Now it's going to ask me to log in as my name, which is Cumulus, and my password. Okay, we're logged in now, and it says 0 updates can be applied immediately, which is good. That means we're fully up to date. If not, you can run the command sudo apt update, and then you can follow that with sudo apt upgrade -y. And that will install any packages that need to be installed. But right now it says system restart required, so since that's there, I always like to do that. So I'm going to type sudo systemctl reboot, and we'll give that a minute to reboot. Okay, rebooted. So now we're going to go back to PuTTY, type in my IP address once more, open that up, and once again type in my name and my password. Okay, everything looks good here. No more messages about updates or needing to reboot. So now I'm going to pop on over to our setup guide, and we're going to run the next 2 commands, which are to install curl and npm. You can just copy and paste these individually, or you can combine them like I will. Simply just type sudo apt install curl space npm space -y. Ask for your password. Next, we're going to go to option 17B, which is FLUX Node install script. So I'm going to select this entire line here, right-click, copy. And then over here, I'm going to switch user to the root user. So I will just type in sudo su space dash, and that will now switch me over to root, which you can see right there. And now I'm going to right-click the screen, which will paste that command right here, and hit enter. This will pull down the multi-toolbox script and execute it. And the first step here is to install Docker. So I'm going to choose option number 1 and hit enter. Okay, now it's asking for my username. I'm going to type in my username, which is Cumulus. Okay. If I didn't have a username on here, it would automatically create that for me. But since we already created it, it says at the top, Cumulus already exists. So we can just bypass that step and then it'll go on to installing Docker. Okay, and finally it'll ask if we would like to switch back to our user account. So just say yes. And we will need to, once again, run that same command. So right-click, paste that command back in here, and that will once again run the multi-toolbox script. And now we are ready to install our FLUX node with number 2. Now, notice the detected IP address is different than the one I'm using to access the node. That's because the detected IP is my public IP. That's the IP attached to my cable modem. So that one is our external IP address. And the one that I use to log into this is my local IP address. Now, you should know this. I'm just putting it out there. You should know these things, the difference between WAN and LAN. But if you don't, now you do. All right. Our next question is to enter your FLUX node identity key generated by Zelcore. So we're going to pop over to Zelcore, click on the Apps button here, click on FLUX nodes, and where it says My FLUX nodes, I'm going to choose the down arrow here, and then click on Edit. All right, and it is giving me an identity key right here. So we'll click the identity key, which will copy it to the clipboard, and then I'll jump back over here and right-click to paste it. Go down to OK. Next, we're going to need our Collateral transaction ID. So right under that is the Collateral transaction ID. Click that, and now that's on the clipboard. Right-click, OK. And then our collateral output index is a 0. So I'll go ahead and put a 0 there. Okay. Now that's going to create our daemon config file. And lastly, it's asking for our Zel ID. That is how it identifies who we are as the admin of that particular node. So it's good to put your Zel ID here. Now we'll go back to the apps icon and then click on Zel ID. And then right there is our Zel ID. Just click the Zel ID number there, and then we'll right-click and paste it in, click OK. Next, it says that our node tier is eligible to receive KDA rewards, so we can plug in our KDA address if we want to earn those rewards. So I would go here to where it says Cadena, and then to receive, and click on our account number. All right, go back over here and paste that account number in, and then click on OK. Pretty much the rest of this script is smooth sailing. It will ask us for some additional information, so we'll just fast forward to those next prompts. Next, it's asking us how we want to download our Bootstrap file. The Bootstrap is basically a copy of the blockchain, and we can use the source that they have in the file here, or we can provide our own source. So if you've already downloaded a copy, you could use that. I'm just going to choose the source in the build script. And as you can see, it'll take a while. Looks like I'm going to have to wait about 54 minutes right now at this current speed. It might be faster for you, but this is where I'm at right now. So we'll just come back when the download is complete. Okay, looks like our Flux daemon is syncing. It's almost done, 281 blocks to go. I do want to mention one little thing before we go to the next step here, and that is that if you're running from your home network, you're going to want to make sure that you configure your router to work with Flux. This is step 8B on the guide here, and you're going to make sure that you go into your router's setup page, and usually you would get there by just going to whatever your gateway IP is. So in many cases, it's 192.168.1.1. You would log into that, and then you're going to want to make sure you go to port forwarding and make sure you open up both the TCP and UDP ports for this range, 16124 to 16128, and then range 30,000 to 39,999. Okay, and then you'll also, if you want to be able to log into your node from outside of your house, you're going to want to open up port 22 to TCP. Although this is optional, and for the sake of security, I would probably recommend not opening up port 22. I have had a lot of experience with devices that have port 22 open and the internet thrashing them. It's just there's bots on the internet that are looking for devices that have port 22 open, and then once they discover there's a device at that IP address that has port 22 open, it will try and log in and log in and log in and just basically try and jailbreak your node. So if you're running it from home, just leave the SSH port 22 closed, and then you can log into it from your local network, okay? There are other ways in which you can set this up, like if your router gives you the option for DMZ, your demilitarized zone, you can put that device basically outside of the firewall. It's not recommended because it could just open you up to vulnerabilities, okay? So ideally, you'd run two separate networks, one for the node and one for your home use, and just split your modem's internet feed. That's something that's a little bit more sophisticated, and there are really good solutions out there. I would recommend checking out Netgate, which create routers that have pfSense on them, and then you can use pfSense to configure it to run multiple networks on the same box. And depending on which of the Ethernet jacks you use, you can have it send out one set of IP addresses on one Ethernet jack and a completely separate network on the other Ethernet jack. So there's some really cool configuration stuff that you can do. That's just my own personal plug for Netgate. I'm not getting paid for that or anything. I'm just saying that there are devices out there that make it possible for you to have really good configuration and safe configuration. Okay, but for all intents and purposes, these are the ports you got to open up on your local router, and make sure they're pointed to the IP address, the local IP address of your Ubuntu installation. So in our case, 192.168.10.124. Okay, back over here in Scriptville, it's asking if we want to enable auto update. So just go ahead and say yes. Would you like to enable alert notifications? Now, if you have your own Discord server, you can configure this to connect to your Discord server. I'm not going to do that, but it's definitely a thing that you could enable. And it will send you little updates if like the node goes down, for instance, or if there's a problem. All right, and we're finally done. Near the end of this, it spits out a bunch of commands that you can use to check the status and all that. But probably most importantly, it gives you your IP address where you would go to log into your node. So let's check that out. Okay, you can access your node by typing in either your local IP address or your external IP address, :16126. And that will get you right here to the login page. And from this point, you're going to want to log in using your Zell ID. So click the Zell ID icon, open up Zelcore, and then you can just sign this transaction, which will log you in. Go back over here, and now we are successfully logged in. Next, you're going to want to jump over here to Benchmark, FLUX Node, and Get Benchmarks. And this should spit out something like this, where you have your Cumulus status. And if everything looks good here, then we're ready to start this node. To start the node, we'll go over here to the app icon, click on FLUX Nodes. And then we'll click on the little down arrow and then click on Edit. And we'll want to give this one a name. So I'm going to call this Odyssey Cumulus. And then for our IP, we're going to want to make sure that we use our external IP address for this. So we'll get that right here. And then I'll click on Save. Now, all that's left to do is click on Start. And then you click Start FLUX Node. All right, now it says Successfully Started FLUX Node. Now you can leave this here, and it will update its status every step of the way. This may take 3 to 5 minutes, something like that. or you can just close this and check the status on your node. And once your node has been successfully started, it will go into a confirmed status. And once it's confirmed, then the status will be Flux is working correctly. Over here on the economics page, we can take a look at what our estimated rewards would be. And it appears as though we are looking at about 13.91 Flux per month plus 6.96 Flux tokens per month. And that's going to get us to right around $9.60 US at the current price of Flux. Now that will fluctuate depending on the price of Flux as well as the number of nodes in that specific tier. So if there's like lots of more Cumulus nodes that are being added, then the price could go down because the number of rewards are being split among more numbers of nodes. Or if the number of nodes goes down, then that means your rewards will go up. So it's a little bit variable there. But nevertheless, you're still bringing in just shy of $10 US for running this device from home on the Flux network. Pretty cool. So that's how you install Flux on the Seeed Studio Odyssey Blue. This is a really cool device. I really like it, and it was very easy to get it up and running for the Flux network. What kind of device are you using to run your Flux nodes from home? Are you on an Odyssey? Are you doing a Raspberry Pi? Maybe an NVIDIA Jetson Nano? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe, ding the bell, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.